You've been hearing a lot about Sony recently. I have as well, and it's not been good news. The Sony's fascination with self-destruction should be studied in the years to come by psychology and all sorts of things. Just study the extreme blindness of corporate greed and short-term gains, but long-term unsustainability. And it should be studied. Modern business practices should be studied. It almost feels like modern bigwigs, shareholders, they want to rake in the money now. They don't care if the company lasts 20 years from now because they are going to be leaving before the thing crashes, and they'll have millions and billions of dollars from short-term gains, but long-term destruction. But me personally, I prefer long-term sustainability. I prefer to create a system that lasts. It might not have an infinite growth policy because the system in which it exists is not an infinite system. It is a closed, finite system. Market and capital are finite commodities. That is why they have value. If it were an infinite commodity, then it would cause infinite inflation, infinite growth, infinite, and it's unsustainable. It is unsustainable. It couldn't last. It doesn't last. Eventually, you will hit the ceiling that you cannot break, and then the whole system collapses. Remember the video game Crash of the 1980s, anybody? If you remember that, if you were alive back then, you're an old fogey now who's probably doubly upset about what's going on right now. But basically, another thing that I really wanted to emphasize is the value of physical media. In the movie space, the TV show space, physical media is important when it comes to dubbing. Dubbing's very important. You take a look at this tape here. I probably showed this tape off a bunch of times before. This is one of the earliest American-released dubs, if not the earliest American-released dubs in English of the original Dragon Ball. This is a re-release, I believe, of the tape. Obviously, it's a re-release. We have the Funimation name and all this other stuff on here. But this is that original cast that came together in the 90s to voice these characters. And naturally, there was a pilot opening that they created. You can look it up on YouTube, where they used to call Goku Zero. And the opening thing was Zero, he's the hero. they changed everybody's names, and obviously that didn't go too well. It wasn't a very popular thing, so they re-recorded the opening, they re-sang the opening, and said, Goku, he's here to show you, instead of Zero, he's the hero. And it's a little bit of a history lesson, obviously, but this dub of the Pilaf Saga and the Curse of the Blood Rubies movie, they licensed that over from Japan to try to release this into the West. Some anime did have some exposure in the West that did pretty well. Astro Boy was okay. Speed Racer was very popular. I think Gundam had a little bit of a niche, but this was their attempt to bring Dragon Ball in, and it failed. So they didn't bother to try to buy any more episodes from Japan to dub any more of OG Dragon Ball in English. So they just skipped right into Z. They skipped right into Z. They did the Saiyan Saga, Ocean dub, and the rest is history, right? But can you find, legitimately, digitally, can you find, streaming-wise, can you find this specific dub of OG Dragon Ball, the Pilaf Saga, and the Curse of the Blood Rubies, with this dubbing team? I call it the Kid Mark dubbing team. That's obviously probably not correct, but I call it the Kid Mark dubbing team because I don't exactly know who We have Funimation, obviously. We have Gen Fukunaga, but I don't know what team dubbed this. Uh, Kidmark, Trimark Holdings is the only thing that shows up on the back here. We have Funimation, obviously, but they licensed. They moved this over to another dubbing house, like how they did with Ocean DBZ. They moved it to the Ocean Group in Canada to dub DBZ for the Saiyan Saga and the first half of the Namek Saga. And but can you find that? Can you find this outside of physical media? You can find it online, obviously. You can probably find all these episodes on YouTube. I haven't bothered to look, but they're probably on here. But legitimately, officially, if you were to go to Crunchyroll or something to try to find OG Dragon Ball, you're going to be listening to the Funimation dub, the actual thing that's on the Blue Bricks physical media DVDs. I've showed those off the past months, years. But this specific dub, you're not going to find that on Crunchyroll, I doubt it. You're not going to find this on any official release. You're going to have to find unofficial releases. You're going to have to find old physical copies. And that's just how it works. When something is changed, updated, the old version just tends to disappear. Unless it had a physical release, and they ripped that physical release onto the internet and gave it to the people so that the people can enjoy it. Another example of updating and changing things. Take a look at this. This is a Star Wars. The Star Wars trilogy. On tape. I'm very happy to own this trilogy on tape, because this is the version of the trilogy before George Lucas went in and made a bunch of changes. A lot of the changes are superficial. They're not major. They're not story breaking. They're not like destructive. They don't destroy the films. If you watch the Blu-rays of the original trilogy, or go onto Disney Plus and watch the original trilogy there, you're still gonna find a very good trilogy of films. It's the best trilogy of films of the Star Wars entire kit. It's, in my opinion, is the entire best. But this is completely unedited. This is the version that released in theaters in their original capacity, in their original format or whatever. They don't have the changes like at the end of a Return of the Jedi, when everybody wins. You get to see the Force Ghosts. Anakin's Force Ghost in the original version is the old man who played Anakin in Return of the Jedi. When Luke took off the guy's mask, you see that version of Anakin. That actor played the Force Ghost of Anakin. In the updated versions, in the modern versions, when you go on to Return of the Jedi, instead of seeing that guy whose name I don't remember, you see Hayden Christensen's Anakin from the prequel trilogy. That's the guy who shows up as a Force Ghost. So that's one of many minor changes. And quite a bit of those changes are in Return of the Jedi, let's be honest with you. Quite a bit of them are in Return of the Jedi. Like when you're on Tatooine, when Luke and Leia are trying to rescue Han from the Hutts. There is a scene in a bar on Tatooine where this green animatronic alien thing is singing a song. That's only in the original version. When you watch the new version on Disney Plus, or get the later released Blu-rays and all of that stuff, you're going to find a completely different CG brown creature singing whatever, and he's all CG. He's not the animatronic green lady thing, alien thing, but it's a completely different thing. It changes the song, extends the number, and it just doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel normal. And finding the original unedited versions are very difficult to do, especially if you want to find them in high definition, because they've never been released in high definition. The original theatrical versions, I believe, have a DVD version. They released a original theatrical release on the original trilogy re-releases on DVD when the prequels were coming out. So after Lucas updated things, they included the original unupdated theatrical releases on those DVDs. But those are the only ones. Any subsequently released copies would not have this. This is a shame. It's a shame. That's why I like physical media. They tend to be what I like to call a snapshot in time. They're like taking a photograph or getting out your old 90s video camera recorder or whatever and putting that thing over your shoulder and recording a little family video, right? It's a snapshot in time, but it's a film, it's a video. It's a video snapshot in time of a specific point in time as it existed in that specific point in time. When you pull that tape out, that tape is your snapshot. Of course, you could digitize that tape, go in and edit things, but that original tape, unedited, is still going to be there, even after you've edited that tape digitally. So, it just makes these things valuable, for lack of a better term that I can think of. It makes these things important. Even if the creators, the rights holders, think that you need that CG creature in Return of the Jedi and on Tatooine, if they think that's more important, even if they think that you, the fan of Star Wars, might think, hey, I want the original version. I want that original song. I don't want this other thing. I want that Yub Nub song at the end of Endor. At the end of the Endor better. I want that Yub Nub song instead of that other song that they put in with the re-edited versions. I want that. What if you want the originals? Right, so the big guys who own the property say, oh, I don't care what you want. It's what we want to release, but you're the consumer. What you want should matter. It should be important. This is my little old wound here. But outside of movies and TV shows and anime, there's also video games. That's the beginning of this video. That's the title of this video. Sony released an update a couple days ago. A little update on their little Twitter platform saying that they're going to close the PlayStation 3 store and they're going to stop making physical discs after 2028. That's important. That's very important to think about, because without physical media, you often lose titles like this. Titles like this. These are the only two movie tie-ins that I could think of off the top of my head that I have. I don't have too many movie tie-ins, but I have a couple, and here's two of them. And this one is not on Steam. It's not on any of the storefronts. You can't find this anywhere digitally. You can only find it physically. And Prince Caspian here. This was developed famously by the company that would make the Lego games. They made this before they started doing the Lego games, and it's very fun. I had a lot of fun playing Prince Caspian. I ended up playing this before I watched the movie. The movie's also fantastic, but the video game is very fun. I very much enjoyed playing as all the various playable characters. You can play as all of them. The 4 heroes of Narnia. You can play as Prince Caspian. You can play as a bunch of the other characters. Little creatures and fantasy creatures that you can play as centaurs and all that. It's a very fun game. And you can't play it. You can't find it digitally anywhere. They never re-released this. It used to be on PC. It used to be available digitally. But then the licenses expire, because that's what happens with movie tie-ins, with TV show tie-ins. The licenses will inevitably expire, because they don't do these contracts for permanent availability. I don't know why, honestly. I really couldn't tell you why video games don't have permanence like movies would. Even if a studio owns the IP to something, that studio who owns the IP could distribute it long after the other studios they partner with that they might have originally distributed on. I don't know why things are the way they are in video games, when it seems so much easier and so much more clear-cut in the film industry. To my knowledge, it's because video games are viewed as software, not exactly as artistic products like films, movies, and TV shows are. These are viewed as software, and I don't understand that, honestly. We've shown that video games can be art. That video games are art. They're an art form. They can even merge and blend cinematic storytelling. If you've played Heavy Rain or Beyond Two Souls, you know what I'm talking about. We're combining a film into a playable interactive format. It's doable. It has been done. They've incorporated such incredible storytelling. If you played the Uncharted games, it's incredible storytelling. It's like a movie in a video game. You can watch. I really would wish they made an actually good Uncharted movie. The Tom Holland one is serviceable at best, but they really needed to have made an Uncharted movie in the late 2000s, right after the first game came out. In the late 2000s, they should have hired Nathan Fillion to play Nathan Drake. And they probably should have gotten some guy like maybe Stephen Lang or some older guy to play Sam. I think his name is Sam. Is it Sam? Sully. I'm thinking of Sam Axe from Burn Notice. But you could have got Bruce Campbell to play Sully. He would have been fine as well. Now, honestly, I would have been a very fun little series if they acted on it when they could, when Nathan Fillion was in the proper age range to play Nathan Drake. Those would have been awesome movies. I'm going to be honest with you. They would have been fantastic. They would have been amazing films. They would have been juggernauts. They would have been box office juggernauts. If you filmed these things and acted and made them look like they came right out of the 70s pulp action Indiana Jones-esque type of stories, mixing in some of that globe-trotting 007, classic 007 stuff, you would have had masterpieces on your hand, man. You would have had masterpieces. But they didn't do it, of course. They didn't do it. I don't know why. I guess they don't like money. I guess they don't like money. But when you look at these, they're temporary licenses. Maybe 5 years. I think it's 5 years for this one. Because around 2018, this game vanished from Steam storefronts. It was just gone. This released in 2013. By 2018, it was just gone. Which means outside of the physical game, which you can buy, the whole game is on the disc. Pop it into your player. You'll be able to play the game exactly as it was made in 2013. Outside of this physical disc, you cannot get to these games. And even if it's not a movie tie, when it's technically this is a movie tie-in. This is Wolverine, X-Men Origins Wolverine, the Uncaged Edition. Was the best Wolverine game you could find, you could ever play. This was the best one until the Insomniac Wolverine game came out, of course. That one is also pretty fun, but I'd argue this one is even more over the top. It can't be very fun type of game. This is more of an arcadey type of game. What do you compare the new Wolverine game to the Uncaged Edition? The thing I usually like to point out is the camera. I don't know what modern gaming's obsession with over-the-shoulder camera angles are, but they need to get over themselves. They need to get over themselves, and they need to abandon that. For games like Wolverine, the camera needs to be like how it is in X-Men Origins Wolverine Uncaged Edition. In the Greek-era God of War games, you need to zoom out that camera, center the character in the middle of the screen so that his combos, the jumping around, the pouncing, the slashing, all of that stuff feels cinematic and amazing, and you can capture and see all of it on the screen. When you're zoomed out, you can see villains and enemies further away, so you could jump on them and pounce on them. When the camera's so closed in, it just doesn't feel right. I've been saying this for a decade now. When God of War PS4 came out, I despised the camera angle. I despised the lack of a jump button. They destroyed the God of War engine, the combat engine. They just completely destroyed it. God of War is an arcade hack and slash game. This is an arcade style hack and slash game. When you make Wolverine, you need to be an arcade style hack and slash game. Obviously, I'm going off topic. Obviously, that's just how it is with me. I go off topic all the time. But games like this, I got to play these. I get to play these because they exist physically. If these never had gotten physical releases, if Sony had decided during the PS3 era that they were not going to release physical discs and they would make everything digitally, thousands of games would just be lost. They'd be in limbo. Ghost code on the internet that you can't legally use, and that no company wants to renew the rights, the licenses to put the game back out. Batman, the Arkham series, Rocksteady has to renew that license to continue to offer the Batman games on digital storefronts. Obviously, those games are very successful. They're very profitable. This one, they were not very profitable. This was pretty good. It was very good. It became a cult classic. When it initially launched, it didn't make millions and millions of sales, obviously. It did not nearly come close to the Arkham Batman games. But if it did, maybe they would have renewed the licenses. Activision may have saw. Well, Activision obviously wouldn't. But it's just how it looks. It's how it is. Sometimes a game gets released and it's amazing. It's amazing. But it's a licensed game. And after about 5 to 10 years, the license expires. And in the modern video game climate, especially single-player games, they're not profitable to keep renewing those licenses, to keep on offering them to play and to buy. So they just go away. You can't find this on digital stores, can't find that. You can only get them digitally. I mean, you can only get them physically. And that sucks. It does. So when you look at the PS6... when they release that Wolverine game, because Insomniac is not going to have an infinite license to offer those games. Even though they made them, they don't own the rights to Spider-Man. They don't own the rights to Wolverine. Eventually, it's not going to be profitable for them to continue to renew that license. Eventually, they're going to stop renewing those licenses. And eventually, Spider-Man, Wolverine, they're just going to be delisted. You're not going to be able to play them anymore, legally. Unless you had the physical copies. You can play those. Because those exist independently of a studio's license to digitally sell the product. Because here's the difference between a physical copy and a digital copy. Every digital copy is a brand new sale, directly from the IP holder to the IP holder in the storefront to the seller, to the consumer. That's a direct new sale. A physical media sale, when you initially purchase it, it acts like that digital sale from the IP holder to the storefront to the consumer. That it's a direct transaction. But after that initial transaction, this physical little disc here can outlast the legal license that the distributor has to continue to make new copies of this. So they run out of the rights to distribute it, they have to pull it digitally. But all of those copies that they made when they did have the rights to distribute it still exist. They go into secondhand stores. They go into pawn shops. They get sold at yard sales. And you can pick them up. You can pick them up and you can play them. You can put them into your player and you can play them. And I love that. I do. These board games are pretty fun. And the only way you can play them is either to track down a physical copy. And prices are getting pretty high for Wolverine Uncaged Edition. Eventually, when the license runs out for those Insomniac games, it's is that the physical copies are going to go shooting through the roof. That's why all of those licensed games for the PS3, the PS2, that's why they're so expensive. That's why all those Spider-Man games are so expensive. Web of Shadows and all that stuff. That's why they're so expensive. It's because they were licensed. They can't re-release those. They can't sell them digitally. They don't have the rights. They'd have to renegotiate that with Marvel or whoever owns the rights to that crap. Sony owns the movie rights. I don't know if they own the game rights. Let me look that up. For example, I decided to research the Spider-Man licensing rights with Insomniac. Sony owns the film rights indefinitely, so long as they continue to make a film every couple of years. They own the rights to Spider-Man film-wise indefinitely. But in regards to video games, Marvel and Disney own the Spider-Man rights. Through a contract, Sony and Marvel, Disney made an agreement through Insomniac to be able to release games, but those are performance requirements, performance-based, roadmap-based. They have to continue to make games over a specific window, and they have to perform within a specific amount of sales. They have to perform well, and if they fail, then Marvel can terminate the partnership. And what happens if Marvel terminates the partnership early? Well, they lose the rights to sell the games. How long do they have the rights for this contract? Currently, to my knowledge, I believe this contract lasts until 2035. That seems like a pretty long time. That seems well into the PS6's life cycle, probably even into the PS7's life cycle. But that is not a long time. We're already, we're already in the nightmare zone. We're already here. And 7 years from now, they're gonna, if they don't renew the contract, if these games aren't performing well, they're going to delist them. They're going to go away. It's just a sad reality. And that means that for the youth, those born, like, say, 2020, by 2035, they're 15-year-olds. They want to play Insomniac Spider-Man. If by 2035, 2036, the license expires and they can't sell it digitally anymore, and they're gone, and the PS6 is digital only, PS7 is digital only, they're going to have to beg Dad to let them borrow the PS4 so they could play Spider-Man 1 on that. Or the PS5 to play Spider-Man 2 and Wolverine on that. Because physical copies are going to be the only way you can play them. Legally! The only way you can play them. This is sad! It is! Sometimes it's music. Sometimes it's music. And recently they re-released Liberty City, GTA 4. They re-released that, but some of the songs, the license expired. So they had to revamp the radio. They had to change and remove the songs so they could no longer put onto the radios and put different songs on. And they could renew some licenses if they were affordable to renew. But eventually these things expire. When the music licenses expire, it's just more feasible to just not offer the game anymore. Which is sad. It is. It's very sad. It's very disappointing, honestly. Because, logically, if you ask me in regards to music licensing for video games, in regards to TV show characters and TV shows, movie tie-ins, if you asked me, I'd say you make the clause indefinite. I would make the clause the same as it would be for a film. Music in a film is tied to that film. Film's 80 years old now. You still listen to it, still play it. The copyright for that song 80 years from now, 80 years old, but you can still watch it. You can still find it on streaming services. You can still find these ancient old songs, ancient old films, 80s films, 70s films, the music that was licensed to it. They could still sell those films. If you ask me, I'd make the same licensing in regards as they would in films for video games. If you ask me, that's what I would do. But that's That's it's what I would call the consumer profit compromise. The profit compromise between the corporation whose bottom line is to make a lot of money and the consumer who just wants to play a video game. Sometimes you make the compromise. It might cost a little bit more to get indefinite licenses, but you'll be able to offer the game forever. So long as you own the rights to the IP, you can offer the game forever. That's what I do. That's what I do, because I prefer to be a consumer-focused business. I would focus on the consumers. I don't care about infinite sky's the limit short-term growth things. I care about long-term sustainability. I want to look at a company and say, I want us to be here 50 years from now. And I want to see every single one of you, if you're still alive, and if you still want to work for us, making the best things you could possibly make 50 years from now. That's how I would look at it. This sounds ideal, but when you look at the 90s, lots of Japanese video game companies were operating under that very logic. The best golden age of video games operated under that logic. When you added Wall Street into the mix, stocks, shareholders, that's when so many of these companies started to fall apart. You look at it, if you want, look through the history. It's just sad. It's depressing. Sometimes a video game company can retain the rights to an IP, to an anime, indefinitely, like Bandai has with Dragon Ball. Bandai made a partnership with Atari. That's why you get to see Atari on these copies here on the PS2 era of Dragon Ball Z games. You got to see Atari's name instead of Bandai, but that's through Infogrames. Infogrames bought out Atari, and then Infogrames started to call themselves Atari, even though you could look on the back, you can still see Infogrames sometimes. It's interesting to look at like this. You probably wouldn't see that on a re-release of Budokai. But it still costs these companies like Bandai, it still costs them money to re-release these things. You gotta renew contracts, you gotta renegotiate royalties to the Japanese voice cast, to the American voice cast. You gotta go talk to Shueisha, you gotta go talk to Toei Animation. So it just feels more logical to just release a new game instead of re-release this. So even though Bandai has the rights to release everything that they've ever made, Budokai Tenkaichi, they have the legal rights to re-release them right now. Right now, they can release all of these games. They can just dump them all onto Steam and say, hey, have fun. Go nuts. They have the rights to do this. That's what I like. That's the type of a contract, license contract that I like. That legally, Bandai has the rights and the ability to just do that. If they wanted to. When you look at these games, though, that logic doesn't work for these games, unfortunately, because contracts and licensing don't work. And we're here. We live in backwardsville when it comes to these tie-ins. I don't know. The longer this video gets, the more I'm just going to ramble. So I'm just going to say in closing that physical media is the last bastion for games like this. And once physical goes away, once Nintendo decides, let's not do physical anymore either, then you could say goodbye to the movie tie-in. You could just go ahead and say goodbye to the movie tie-in. You could say goodbye to the licensed superhero games. They might still make them, but they're going to be on a ticking timer. And if it's no longer profitable to put them on the storefronts, they're going to delist them. They're not going to bother to renew the licensing contracts, and they're going to go away. Like so many others. Tens of thousands of others. I think there's something that I looked up statistics-wise that said only 13% of the games that have ever been made are available legally to purchase. 13%. It means 87% of gaming is just gone legally. You have to go through the second-hand market for the legal option to purchase them, or go through unofficial chains. That's sad, isn't it? It's very sad. It makes me feel very sad to think about that stuff. Because it doesn't have to be that way. But today's corporations chase short term growth because of greed. Sheer greed. And in the legal standpoint form of view, video games are not artistically protected products like a movie is. They're software. And if the software company decides, hey, we don't want to sell this anymore, they just pull it. And if you, the player, the consumer, thinks, hey, this is an old game, but I really want to play it. It looks really fun when I saw playthroughs on YouTube. I don't have a PS3, and even if I did, physical copies are $200. I don't want to spend that. Especially since Activision isn't going to see any of that $200. So can I emulate that? What do I emulate that? But then they say no, you can't do that. Can't do that. It's not legal. So you can't do that. So you say, but sell it to me. No, we can't do that. We don't have the license to do that. We can't do that. You get the license then. Oh, that's too expensive. It's too expensive. We can't do that. Then you're not going to lose any money if I did that. True, but we can't do that. We can't do that. It's sad.